All right, there's a lot going on Capitol Hill with President Trump and the Supreme Court. To help me go through these big stories, I have Alex Marlow. Alex, thank you for joining me again.
Stephen, always nice to be on your program. I always enjoy these conversations.
So just some background for my audience. Alex Marlow is the chief editor over at Breitbart News. They put out incredible information, have high-level contacts with members of Congress and the president. Alex also has his own show right here on YouTube, the Alex Marlow Show. So I'll make sure to put a link to that. Alex, yesterday, former President Joe Biden's doctor, Kevin O'Connor, was compelled to testify before Congress. He literally shared nothing. He wasted millions of dollars of time, was not helpful. He tried to hide behind executive privilege, even though President Trump waived that. He pled the fifth 14 times in 20 minutes. What do you think is going on here? And why would you plead the fifth if Congress is telling you, giving you permission to tell us the truth? What are your thoughts on that situation?
Steve, this is exactly. So you're a citizen journalist and I'm kind of citizen half professional journalist. And we had the same question. This is the question I asked. Why would you plead the fifth if you're a doctor and you are just being asked about a patient? The only logical answer I could think of is maybe he's afraid of some sort of a HIPAA violation that he can't answer even in this sort of a congressional setting because it would violate some sort of doctor-patient rights, privilege, however you want to frame it. That's the only thing I could think of that's at all charitable. But the look it's a really terrible look that we're not. He's president of the United States. I was very skeptical a doctor would give us a lot because you can't just spill the beans on patients, even if they're powerful, as far as I could tell. But still, just the frequency, just that of the Fifth Amendment is I can't answer because I'm going to incriminate myself. I mean, it's by definition a bad look. So was I surprised that we didn't get anything out of him? No, but just the thought that he believes that he would be committing some sort of a criminal act to ask basic questions about the mental fitness of the commander-in-chief of the United States is deeply alarming.
Yeah. Now, I've been having some hearing problems. Did you say a HIPAA issue or a hit job?
Yeah, right.
Because,
Yeah,
is this guy afraid? I don't want to be the person that rats out the Bidens and then I end up getting Clintoned or something. There could be some of that, but I guess maybe his lawyers recommended saying, hey, I'm just going to plead the fifth, but it does make him look guilty instead of saying, as you know, Senator, under HIPAA health law, I can't share patient information. Then he doesn't look guilty and he's keeping his oath. But by pleading the fifth, it makes it look like, hey, you're absolutely hiding something from us.
You and I are precisely on the same page here, because that was exactly what I thought, which is that, okay, so if he can't answer it because of his doctor-patient relationship and privacy concerns, then just explain it that way. Don't just keep saying you plead the fifth, like, it's the O.J. Simpson trial. Like what's going on here? It struck me as a very not strategic approach. If you're trying to look innocent, this is not how you would portray it. And so either he's got very bad attorneys or he really is covering up some broad crime.
Yeah, I mean, the other thing is we find out that Biden has aggressive prostate cancer that has metastasized into his bones. I had a father that has since passed with prostate. It spreads slowly, unless you have turbo cancer from the miracle shots or something like that. But you're telling me that this doctor over at supposedly the best hospital in the world, a military hospital, giving medical treatment to the president of the United States, didn't run an $80 blood test to tell us whether he had cancer or not? I don't know. I feel like there's so many basic things that should have been done unless there's a cover up.
Well, here's a fact. And my last book, which you've been kind enough to talk about numerous times over the last couple of years, Stephen, with me, Breaking Biden, that I wrote, I looked into his whole medical history, and we've just been lied to the whole time. The whole time we were lied to about his medical history. First of all, so he had aneurysm surgeries in the 80s that could have paralyzed him. It could have cut off his speech. It's a semi-miracle he was alive. He was given last rites. He was that sick. He had brain surgery multiple times. That was a not even close to a guaranteed survival rate. And just the thought that that's supposed to have no effect on a guy moving into his ninth decade on the planet is, of course, absurd. And yet that's what we were told all the time. We were told in the last time we got a really comprehensive report on his physical health as president that his only ailments were sleep apnea and a stiff gait. So doesn't make any sense. That's just, he's in better health than you and me, Stephen, even though he looks like the way he is, which of course are logical. Even the sleep apnea was portrayed in a deeply dishonest way, because we learned that he'd apparently had sleep apnea, which is a routine thing, for 15 years, and they covered it up for 15 years. So they acted like, oh, that's old news. Wait a minute. You never told us. You're telling us in 2022, and he's had it since 2008. And he was sleeping with one of those crazy masks that you have to wear if you have that thing. And no one told us. Why cover that up unless you're hiding other stuff? It just proves to you that these people are all liars around Joe Biden, who is one of the biggest liars in the history of the country. And we have just only begun to scratch the surface to try to bring justice to these people and what they did to this country.
My favorite liar for Biden was Karine Jean-Pierre. I can't keep up with him. He's so brilliant. the energy at this level. Then
she wasn't even in the room.
Then she leaves the Democrat Party and she's like, "Oh, I never saw him. I was never around the president." Like, you're the press secretary, and they even hid the president from you. Come on.
Yeah, it is an interesting thing about the job of press secretaries. You are a flack. You are supposed to take flack for the president, and that means that when you're up there on that podium, you're supposed to make him look bulletproof. And that's when it's Joe Biden, you weren't in the room, and he is coming off like an imbecile, and his policies are terrible, and you got inflation, and you've got the botched Afghanistan withdrawal, and you've got the run on the border and the fentanyl. And just, how do you get up there every day unless you've just got an ability to lie through your teeth? And that's what we saw with her.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, I want to turn to a doctor who's now a member of Congress, Ronnie Jackson.
Sure.
He was a physician for 3 different presidents, specifically the doctor for Barack Obama and Donald J. Trump. He weighs in on this, and he said, we're absolutely going to get to the bottom, because Dr. O'Connor is the linchpin in discovering what really happened with Biden. Let me pull this up and we'll react to it together.
Hey everybody, Dr. Ronnie Jackson here from Amarillo, Texas, just chiming in on the news of the day. As many of you know, I was a former physician to the president for President Trump and President Obama. I was a White House physician during 3 administrations, Bush, Obama, and Trump. And I've been asked by a lot of people today, what's going on with Dr. Kevin O'Connor? As you know, Dr. Kevin O'Connor was a former physician to the president for President Joe Biden, and he was subpoenaed to speak before Congress today and give his testimony on his role in the cover-up of President Joe Biden's cognitive decline during his presidency and the potential illegal use of the auto pen. Unfortunately, Dr. O'Connor started and continued his testimony by pleading the 5th. Very unusual. You have to ask yourself, why would you plead the 5th if you weren't personally doing something that was illegal or unethical? That's a question that remains. And I think the answer to that question is probably because he was. We won't know exactly yet, but we will find out. He started off by claiming that he had presidential privilege, which President Trump relieved him of and waived that. He had that. That was not a concern at all at this point. He also said that there was doctor-patient privilege that was looked at by the committee. And we know that HIPAA and the American Medical Association have looked at this issue and said that you can be legally compelled to discuss conversations between a patient and a doctor under the right legal circumstances. This definitely fell into that category. He was being subpoenaed under oath to give testimony before the United States Congress. He did not. I just want to let everybody know this is not over yet. We have lots of whistleblowers out there. We have lots of other people that are in line for testimony. Some are being compelled to testify, and some are doing it voluntarily, but they're all going to come out. Whistleblowers are going to come out. We will put the pieces of this puzzle together. I do not think that this is the last time that you will see Dr. Kevin O'Connor before Congress, and next time I'm assuming that he will be compelled to tell us the truth and to be honest with the American people and let us know what happened. We cannot have a situation where we have unelected officials in the West Wing that are making presidential decisions without the president's knowledge and being covered up by key people around him, such as the physician to the president, the first lady, and other people that are close to the president. I do believe that's what happened. We will get the answers to this. Thank you, and God bless America.
Okay, your initial reaction to that?
It's just a more informed version of my first reaction, which is that it just doesn't add up that he would not be able to share a lot of this information in the right setting. We're talking to congressional investigators. This is not, we're disclosing it to trash talk someone to the New York Post. Like, we're not spilling the beans to the tabloid media. We're investigating whether or not the president had the mental capacity to be the president when he was the president, and what implications that might have for the legality of a lot of his decisions and policies. That's what we're looking at right now. And so he is under an obligation to be able to share key details. It doesn't have to be every single detail, but ones that are relative to his mental health, given the widespread testimony that he was not fit to be president at the time, and that there was some sort of a cover-up. Now, Stephen, my take is that I don't think there was a cover-up. I think we all knew he was in a deep mental distress, and we just ignored it because they thought that he was the best at beating Trump of any of the available Democrats, which it turned out was true. So but overall, if we're going down this road, then I'm stunned if he believes that he can't at least share some of these key details. So I think Congressman Comer needs to be relentless about hauling these people in, bring them back in, make their lives very difficult until we get to the bottom of this thing, which can be tough to do, but it's worth the effort.
Yeah, I liked hearing a member of Congress that's also a doctor
Yep.
saying we've been talking with lawyers, and you can break HIPAA when you are compelled to legally testify. So that could open up. Now, I'm going to bring up a lawyer here on Fox News, Jonathan Turley, someone that a lot of people respect. He actually lays out what he thinks they should do in order to get to the truth. Let me show that and we'll react.
Well, you have to keep on repeating that line because you can't get into any answers without undermining your invocation. The question is really what Congress will do about it. They can actually force his testimony by giving him a grant of immunity. Now, the key about the patient privilege is that is often negated in a case of what's called the crime fraud exception. In fact, even laws like HIPAA have exceptions for subpoenas and criminal investigations. What the Oversight Committee is saying is we're looking into possible crimes here. These are very serious allegations that even legislation was signed without the knowledge and consent of the president. That can be a crime. There's also questions whether perjury might have been committed. So Congress is in a good position here, but it's likely that O'Connor and maybe even President Biden could go to court to try to prevent even his being compelled to testify.
Okay, didn't the White House the other day say we'll give you all the immunity you want?
Okay, so this is kind of interesting. He's again agreeing, saying you can break HIPAA in the case, like, hey, you're the therapist of so and so. We believe murdered this person. Did they ever openly talk about? Yes, they did, right? So, but the other thing is like give him immunity, give him that protection, and then he has to open up. Your thoughts on that?
Yeah, this is the point of privacy protection here, and we're talking about what is the point of privacy protection? It is not to conceal crimes created against the American people, and so they're trying to rely on maybe a really strict letter of the law interpretation when it's clearly that these attorneys for Dr. O'Connor are recommending this because they think it's in the best interest of their client. They don't know whether or not this is this is the real right legal approach. They're taking an angle here, and that's how we need to regard it. This is not a closed case here. Jonathan Turley's one of the best at this legal analysis, and he's a pretty neutral guy. I think he's probably shading in our direction politically, but he's not someone who's a hardcore Trumpist. So it's just another guy to be taken seriously. I think when he weighs in that way. So I think that this is one where he is simply getting counseled legally by his attorneys. The best approach is this approach, but we have to be dogged and to make sure that we bring him back and we determine what he can answer, because he's got to give us answers, and this is not adequate.
Have you noticed that anytime Democrats are interviewed and the interview's not going their way, they just automatically flip over to I'm worried about Trump, or it's Trump's fault? Like they have no position, they have no defense, and so their fallback, their plan B, their parachute is always it's Trump. It's Trump's issue, right? So Jasmine Crockett, Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett, she was asked about all of this damning information coming out. Listen to what she had to say.
Do you have concerns about the president's health and his mental acuity?
No.
None
No,
whatsoever.
I had none. Now, granted, I didn't see Joe Biden every single day, but I did have an opportunity to interact with the president. I never had a concern. If there's anyone that I am concerned about their mental acuity, it is the current occupant.
All right, so not worried about Joe Biden, even though there's mountains of evidence that he was mentally deficient, that the auto pen had been hijacked, that he didn't remember policies or executive orders. But all of that leads her to believe that Donald Trump has mental issues.
Yeah, that's what she does every time. She only makes things about herself or about Donald Trump. I was playing a clip on my show earlier in the week of her reacting to the devastating floods in Texas. She's a Texas congresswoman that killed all these Christian girls. And her first thing was to say what a heavy burden it is on her personally. It's not a burden on her at all, but she immediately made it about herself. And then she immediately blamed Trump. And this is all in, a 30-second soundbite. Like it's immediately how she thinks about herself, thinks about Trump. And I'll tell you, she's getting a lot of positive feedback from the left-wing grassroots. She's a character on my show. She's someone at Breitbart we love to make fun of all the time. But just know that she's probably going to run for Senate in Texas as a Democrat. And she will almost certainly get the nomination unless the Democrat apparatus tries to stop her somehow, because the pandering to the hardcore anti-Trump base is how you get through a Democrat primary. And this is a piece of the puzzle that is obvious. I'm sure a lot of people are thinking this is obvious now that I'm saying it, but people aren't processing this, that this is how you get currency within the Democrat Party, is to see how hardcore and how pure your Trump hatred is. That's the name of their game right now. And that's why you can continue to see the MSNBC-ification of the Democratic Party, even though it seems really unproductive when you're out of power, because that means you're giving away all your bargaining chips vis-a-vis with Republicans. But that's not what they're looking for. They're looking down the field. How can they get through their own primaries? And you do it with insane comments like that one.
It should probably just be labeled the Letitia James method, right?
Yeah.
Like, I've got nothing to run on, but I will get Trump.
I will get Trump.
Even if I have to break the law, lie, change the law, commit the same crime that I'm accusing him of, I will get him. That will be her method. She has to go.
Alvin Bragg, Fonnie Willis did the same thing, all of them.
Yeah. You live there in the Los Angeles area. I'm seeing videos on TikTok, on Twitter, even Fox News is saying that with ICE in the area, that the freeway traffic in Los Angeles is at an all-time low. Like there's people that live in LA that are like, I've never seen the freeway this unjammed. Is that true?
Yeah, I have not noticed it. So I don't mean to splash cold water. I hope it's true. I'm going to be on the road today. I try to stay close to home during the week. Just because I've developed somewhat of an allergy, Stephen, to traffic, because I always lived in the wrong side of town. I grew up living on one side of town and going to school on the other side. And then when I got out of college, I moved to the other side of town and worked near where I used to live. And I can't sit in traffic. I'll tell you though, that there's a couple of things I'm tracking. First of all, it is summer break. And traffic here is much lighter during summer breaks. Second of all, it's incredibly hot. It's 101 in my neighborhood, which is very unseasonably hot. I don't know if that's keeping some people inside, but There are millions of illegal aliens in this city. And if they're not going out, if they can't go get those day labor jobs, if they're in fear of ICE raids, then it is going to thin out traffic to some degree. But some of the reports I'm seeing, like rush hour, zero traffic, I mean, that seems to me like an aberration, or maybe something that is something going on that is beyond just illegal immigration. But just on a logical basis, if we have millions of illegal aliens in this city and they're not free to move around as much as they were, of course you are going to see some effects. So I will report back to you, I promise, after I hit the road today, and I'll let you know what I see.
Okay. To me, I was like, to me, this sounds a little bit too good to be true.
That's where I'm at.
Yeah.
As of now.
I like how you said you're allergic to traffic. That's a good one. Whenever I go to the doctor, they'll say, any allergies? And I say, bee stings and bullet wounds. And then they look and they're like, bullet wounds? You're allergic to bullet wounds? I'm like, lady, if I get shot, my body does not have a good reaction. I just always try to be a little bit lighthearted. But sometimes they take it a little too serious. Okay. Speaking of seriousness, couple of days ago, the Supreme Court made a decision regarding President Trump's authority to lay off federal workers. They gave him the green light. Wouldn't you know it? Boom, a lower court immediately issues an injunction to block President Trump. Your thoughts on what Trump wants to do with the mass layoffs and these federal judges that are now saying we're more powerful than POTUS and SCOTUS? Your take on that?
I've been pretty obsessed with this issue, Stephen. People can see watching on the set. I have a new book coming out in a few weeks called Breaking the Law. I'd love to spend some time with you on it next month when it's out, but it's out in about 3 weeks. And I go into all this stuff. Trump needs a veto. Basically, he needs to get around the vetoes of 677 district judges whenever he wants to do anything. And the Supreme Court has ruled that this is not okay, but that doesn't mean they're going to stop trying and then just force it to go through the appeals process and eventually get overturned. And all this does is buy time for the institutional left. It slows down Trump's agenda. It takes up resources. It takes up energy. It takes up time. It takes up the focus. And this is the resistance. And what I go through in the book is I go through who's funding it. It is a lot of the usual suspects, as well as some new names that you'll have heard. But the billionaire class sees this as the way to oppose Trump. They've seen it since he stepped aside in 2021 as president. They've thought that this is the path to controlling him, is through the court system, through the legal process, through legal harassment. There's been zero justice for President Trump at this point, and this is going to continue. The Supreme Court luckily leans conservative as of this time, so we've got a chance. But Amy Coney Barrett traditionally has been pretty disappointing. Gorsuch is really a libertarian, so he's not going to hit the bid in a lot of issues. And, even Kavanaugh's imperfect. We really only have two perfect judges, which is Thomas and Alito. And other than that, you don't know for sure if the Supreme Court is going to bail you out. And these liberal judges, but more importantly, their funders are very emboldened by this. This is the fight of the Trump administration. The Democrats are hopeless. We've all seen that. The courts are not. The courts have a chance to stop them and to stop him, and they will keep trying to do so.
Okay. So these billionaires that are funding this, pushing for this, they're not living by the "if you can't beat them, join them" motto. If you can't beat them, slow them down in court.
Buy time.
Hamstring them. Maybe one of these will get blocked. Yeah, that's an interesting.
Here's the logic that we need to fear. Is that Stephen Miller put it best. He said the most valuable resource for an executive branch is time. So there's only so much time that Trump has to do what he's got to do. And it's going to be tough to win the midterms, given the makeup of the race. There's a lot of Republican Senate seats that we're going to have to defend. Traditionally, midterms go to the opposition party anyway. And just if you think about the nature of something like, let's say, the Iran strike or the big, beautiful bill, these are two perfect examples, things that Trump got passed. So every single Democrat is going to oppose those things because Trump's for it. So thus they'll be against it. And then you're going to lose on your best day, maybe 20% of Republicans, even on popular issues, who are going to say X, Y, or Z tactic did not go far enough or went too far. So best case scenario, you're getting a coalition together of like 40% of the public whenever you make a big time decision. This is exactly why it's a lot easier from a political standpoint to just announce everything this guy's done is wrong, vote for us. It's much harder to actually have to govern and lead and then make the case to the public that what you did was worthwhile and worth it. That's why the burden is always heavier for the incumbent. And this is why we cannot, as much of a mess the Democrats are, we cannot take for granted that we could lose the midterms. The Republicans, the conservatives could lose the midterms. So we got to be fired up now. We got to get as much done as we can now. And we have to be as vocal as we can now about victories and putting those in context for the American people.
Yeah, no, well said. The reporting data is under President Biden, most new jobs went to foreigners or government. Now Trump is getting rid of the foreigners and bringing back, native citizen jobs. 500,000 lost foreigner jobs, 2 million plus native citizens. That's huge, but he still needs to shrink that government in order to keep that campaign promise. What are your thoughts on Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson? She seems to be the sole dissenter on this, as well as many others. But now you've got multiple times where other justices have basically said, do you not understand the law? Like, do you not know what we're doing here? Yeah. Do you think she is qualified to be a Supreme Court justice?
No, absolutely not. This is a huge vein for me. First of all, at Breitbart, we are so excited about the fact that the jobs in Trump's economy are going to native-born Americans. This is a massive victory. Any sort of claim that there were new jobs coming in during the Biden administration, it was all going to migrants. And we are America first. I'm not anti-immigration per se. If we can get a few rock stars in here who really want to be a part of the American fabric, I'm okay with that. But we know that's not what our immigration system is, Stephen. We've got the illegal aliens, and then we've got the H-1B workers who are coming in to displace Americans and to do the same jobs for a lower rate than Americans and undermining our entire national fabric. It is all designed because the people who have led this sort of technocratic aristocracy that's been leading both of our major political parties until Trump came down that escalator 10 years ago, they regard America as an economy first and as a country second. They don't regard us as a people or a nation. They just see us as an economic engine. And this is and a part of the reason why is because they feel like they can increase their bottom line by importing foreigners to do jobs that Americans will do, just not as cheaply as people they import from other parts of the world. So it is a toxic idea that's been so pervasive throughout our politics, and it's finally going away. And I'm just so happy to see it. I'm so happy to see it. But this is something that we track very closely at Breitbart. But it is the essence of America first, and of America, I think, regaining our patriotism, enthusiasm, and just the national pride that feels like has been under attack for so long. So now back to your point about Justice Jackson. No, of course she's not qualified. Joe Biden said she was picked specifically for being a Black woman. I think this undermines so many of our beliefs that we hold as a country, particularly that you're supposed to judge people based on the content of their character, and in this case of their brain power, and not based off of their skin tone. Joe Biden did the exact opposite. He hired her for purely racist and sexist reasons. And she has proven all of the worst case scenarios for affirmative action, race-based preferencing hires. She has proven to be by far the weakest link on the court, significantly dumber than the other liberals on the court. And it's a terrible look for the whole DEI apparatus. And I hopefully people take this in. Her decisions are laughable. When she writes them up, they're so colloquial that I couldn't let them into just basic news copy at the Breitbart newsroom. This is the U.S. Supreme Court, and she writes as if she's a child. And this is something that is, it's alarming, it's embarrassing, but most importantly for me, it's hilarious. I think it's funny, and we're going to make fun of her all the time. It's the only approach, though, and this is the scary part that is worth pointing out. The scary part here is that there is nothing we can do unless some sort of crazy miraculous thing happens where we learn that Joe Biden's whole presidency is null and void because of his mental decline and the auto pen. And, unless there's something that I'm not anticipating happens, she's there for life. So we're gonna get 20 or 30 years of this stuff. And all we can do is two things. One, make fun of her as much as we possibly can. And two, we need to understand that every election matters. Joe Biden got one Supreme Court pick, and it was a total disaster. That's why we can never lose. We have to win every race all the time to ensure that we get the best, most conservative, most originalist judges imaginable. And we need to make sure that we are loaded up in terms of our bench. People need to be vetted. We need to be prepared to be able to overwhelm the leftist lawfare superstructure establishment that I document a lot of my research.
Yeah. Yeah. I thought it was so interesting. The person he picked without like regard to experience, college, background, years on the bench, had to be Black and had to be a woman. And then this woman is asked in her confirmation, what is a woman? And she doesn't even know what a woman is. And it had to be a woman. It's like, so
that's such a great point. Is that
yeah, like
that she's only there because she's a woman, but she doesn't
couldn't
even know.
define what it was.
Yeah. It's an awesome point. And she's a huge disgrace, but look, we need to use these moments to our advantage. I'm playing a long game. I'm like you, Stephen, this comes up a bit. I've got children. I mean, I'm looking at this country in terms of multiple hundreds of years as a experiment. I'm not just trying to look past next weekend. And if you look at it like that we have a obligation to make examples out of these people and to use their shortcomings to prove why we are the ones who should have the power. But we need to show that leadership.
Yeah. And at the same time, though, as you mentioned earlier, there's still that threat that creeps that they could take back Congress in 2026. Like it's a real thing.
It is a threat.
Yeah. In my mind, it's like they have no policy, and yet there is enough people that they swing back. It's just such a bizarre thing.
I just gave you the math. You've got a huge chunk of the country that will just be knee-jerk anti-Trump, that if they ran, Fidel Castro or Chairman Mao, they would still get votes just because they're not Trump. And then there's people who might be new to the coalition. Maybe they're disappointed in the Epstein stuff. Maybe they don't like Israel as much as Trump. And then they might decide, I'm just going to sit out. I'm going to stay home. It's a midterm. So do not get overly cocky. As well as things seem to be going, do not get cocky. We need to stay engaged, and that's why we got to keep having these conversations.
What is your take on Elon Musk and this new America Party? Because he came out pretty aggressive, but then he's saying we're not going to run anyone in 2026. We're not going to run anyone in 2028. So is this like a slow build, or is he going to do the George Soros thing where he specifically targets like, okay, this year we're going to go after House people. This year we're going to go after Senate seats. What do you think is going to happen with him?
Yeah, it's an interesting one because, first of all, third parties have never worked in this country. All they've done is been sort of stalking horses where they're able to siphon off votes from a bad guy so that, like Bill Clinton won one of his races with 41% of the vote. But the third parties have never been viable, or at least, not for 150 plus years. I don't know the exact math on when they were. His platform seems almost identical to the Libertarian Party's platform, which has always been losers, which is weird to me. But it is, we know the point. The point is to undermine Trump. The point is to undermine Donald Trump's party and his movement. And with margins as narrow as they are in this country, it's not good. So now Musk is an extraordinary individual. I'm not a pure Musk fan, but a lot of the stuff he does is extraordinary. I mean, the most obvious example is the, catching the rocket ship with the erector set arms is just mind-blowing stuff. And so I'm sure that he feels like he can do the impossible because he's done it before, but we've not had viable third parties, and all they've done is serve to punish certain people. And he's trying to punish Trump. That's the point of this thing. But what are the policies? The only one I really know is he likes a lot of H-1Bs, which I don't think that most normal Americans like a lot of H-1Bs, because when you think about the logic of, let's take my family, for example. So I live in California. I'm in a high tax bracket, but I'm not a rich person. I pay exorbitant amounts of money, some of the highest percentages in taxes every year. And the expectation is that when my children who have been Americans, who've been part of the economy, who have gotten the lessons and have gotten the food and have, I got a bigger car to accommodate all the kids and we do the theme park runs. And so one day when they're up for a job and it's a STEM job and it's a good job, it's 175K. But there's someone from a small region of India that will do it for 155K. Musk is 100% wants to do the job, but wants to bring in the person from India for 155K, and they do the job despite all of the factors that went into the grooming and the raising of my child as an American. And that is not something that's going to be that popular once you break it down that way. And that seems to be the essence of what Musk wants to do, other than that he's mad at Trump. So I'm skeptical he'll stick with it. And if he does, it can only do damage. There's nothing productive about it. It just seems to be bitter and petty. And so I'm pretty negative, Stephen, in a nutshell.
Yeah. Yeah. I kind of feel the same way, where it's like, okay, we now know that the Democrats used our money to undermine America. Is Musk saying, I'm going to use your votes to undermine America by bringing in more foreigners that I would rather pay less money than Americans? I mean, like, wouldn't if he was really like, okay, India really is producing a better engineer, why wouldn't you say, I'm going to create the University of Elon Musk that makes the smartest American engineers right here in the homeland? To me, it just seems backwards. But again, is this all just out of being embarrassed about how he behaved with Trump, or that more Doge stuff didn't happen? It does seem a bit petty to me.
And it is, just to be fair, I mean, there's a bit of a give and take to it. I mean, if you think about how probably a little competition from around the world is healthy, if we do feel like we got to compete, we can't just, if you broaden the pool of who you're competing with, it's going to make you sharper. So I'm not saying that it's good for us to have zero immigration, but the priorities have to go to Americans who have been a part of the fabric of our country. We are a people, we are a homeland, we are a nation. We're not merely an economy. And this is, I think, fundamental to most people. I don't even think this is a partisan thing. And so it's really a sort of plutocratic billionaire class type person who would be compelled to just, well, I don't care who they are, they're cheaper, so let's just bring them. It's very cynical and not patriotic.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, okay. I don't want to go too deep into your new book, Breaking the Law, but just give us a flavor for what's going to be in there.
Yeah, thankfully your line of questioning was does give you a good flavor. And thank you for bringing it up. This is of my 3 books. This is the one I felt needed to be written. I was watching the lawfare play out against President Trump during his interim between the 2 presidencies. And I thought people were actually underselling it. I think that there was clear coordination across branches of government. The politicized nature of the judicial system, the weaponization, it was more than we'd ever seen before. And we'd gone through the Russia collusion hoax, and yet somehow it was only getting worse. These people were not deterred, and they were determined to either bankrupt or jail Trump. We learned Joe Biden actually thought Trump was going to be in jail, which is probably part of why he stuck around so long in the race, is that they thought they were going to actually jail him. And I still think that even though it was a big focus, there was still too much of a passé attitude about what was going on. And lo and behold, as I'm halfway through work on the book, we get into Trump's administration. He wins. He survives the assassination. And all of a sudden, what is the only valid resistance against Trump? It's the lawfare superstructure, the exact people who've been building an apparatus starting from our law schools and working all the way up to the literally the White House, as you'll see in the book, from Joe Biden's administration and the upper echelons of the DOJ, all working in concert to try to undermine Trumpism, MAGA, America First. And it's a unbelievably frightening story. And there is yet to be any justice for Trump. There's been no justice for him. There's not been one arrest. There's barely been any firings. We need to make sure that the people who were coordinating this effort get held to account. And that's what I'm determined to do.
Okay. Well, I look forward to having you on to go deeper into that. I'm on to you, though. Breaking the news, breaking Biden, breaking the law. I'm on to you. You like the word breaking. So good stuff.
I do like the word breaking.
Alex, I want to put a direct link to your show so that people can check that out here on YouTube as well as on Rumble, and then also Breitbart News and your X account. Thank you so much for all that you do and spending time with me today. I hope you have a great rest of your day.
Stephen, we always have fun, and I'll return the favor soon.
Thank you so much.